Zero Mark here with an event preview for the upcoming Legendary Game of Heroes Slayer event, Grove of the Titans. Let's take a look at this event deck. If I go to the collection, scroll down here to find the support hero, Arcane Henga. Battle skill is to apply Earth and Aid. What's Earth and Aid? Earth and Aid is its passive. The passive, each time this hero attacks, it creates 3 Earth gems. So this is a gem creation card that will give other heroes that same skill to create Earth gems on attack. So you have to be attacking constantly. So every turn you want to have an attack, and that'll create a bunch of Earth gems. The event card creates 4 Earth Power Gems, and if there are 6 or more Earth Power Gem 4s on the board already, you get 4 additional ones. That's the 5-star version. If we go back to the front page of the pack, we can find the 6-star version, which says creates 5 Earth Power Gem 1s, and if there are 6 or more Earth Power Gem 4s on the board, creates 5 additional, and heals. So this card works really well if you have 6 Earth Power Gem 4s on the board already, because then you get 10 additional Power Gems, which can be huge. So getting tons and tons of gems if you already have 6 Earth Power Gem 4s on the board. If we go to the X13 in this deck, we'll find out that its skills are just the upgraded version of that event card, because it's creating 5 Earth Power Gem 2s instead of Earth Power Gem 1s. And if there are 6 or more Earth Power Gem 4s, you get 5 additional, so 10 Earth Power Gem 2s. That can be huge, but to get that big extra bump of Earth Power Gem 2s, you need to have 6 Earth Power Gem 4s on the board. So how do you get the Earth Power Gem 4s on the board? That comes from the Ultra Rare card, which has a passive that says each time this hero attacks, it creates an Earth Power Gem 3. It says Power Gem 3 because this is the 5-star version. If it was the 6-star version of this card, it would say each time this hero attacks, it creates an Earth Power Gem 4. Also, its battle skill then applies its passive to other heroes. So once you've used this skill and then everybody attacks, you can create a whole bunch of Power Gem 4s, which then allows you to get the event card and the X13 card to fill up the board with tons and tons and tons of Power Gems and do massive combos and massive damage. But in order for this deck to work, you absolutely need this Ultra Rare card, and probably 2 copies of this Ultra Rare card. And if this deck looks familiar, hopefully, because a few events ago, the last Red Commander event had the exact carbon copy of this deck, except for it was red instead of green. The only difference between the 2 decks is in the event card in the X13, there's that heal for 100% of recovery. There was no heal on the Red Commander deck, which made it have not much survivability, which made it not as viable because it died pretty quickly. So this deck is a carbon copy of the Red Commander deck from a few events ago. In that particular event, I was lucky enough to get good drops for my collection, for my X13 collection. I had 6 drops, and I got all 6 of the things, and so I was able to get a copy of the X13. I also, from the Hero collection here, where they give you the Titanic Hero, I was able to pull an event card. So I had the event card, I had the X13, I had a bunch of the support cards, and so I figured I would build out a deck and see how functional it was. I didn't have any of the Ultra Rares, so I was never able to get enough Power Gem 4s for the X13 to really function. So it was a mediocre deck for me at best, and I ended up not even really using it in the event. And that was when it had all its multipliers. So I'm not a huge fan of this deck unless you have a couple of the Ultra Rares to really make this deck work. So if you're not going to go after multiple copies of the Ultra Rare, this deck is going to be a mid to low tier deck, in my opinion. But the perfect deck for this event for me would be, if I could just pick the cards out of space, I'd pick 2 ultra rares, I'd pick 2 X13s, and 1 of the support cards to make that deck. And if I could get those cards, I think this would actually be a pretty good and powerful deck, although it might be a little bit slow for a Slayer event, just because you have to do extra turns to get passives to fire off, to get to the one where you're actually doing the big attack. So in a lot of decks, the first attack you do is based on your relics generating gems, and then that powers up all of your skills, and then you can fire off all of the skills on turn 2 and do big, huge damage on turn 2. This deck, you have to fire off a couple of the skills on turn 2, and then when you attack on turn 2, it generates all of the stuff for a third turn attack that would be the really big attack. So you have 1 extra turn, which in the Slayer event, when microseconds matter, could make a big difference. That could also be good, because if the event deck is a little bit slower, it can give other people who don't have quite as powerful a decks maybe a little bit more time and a little bit more chance to get in and hit your damage thresholds. But overall, in my estimation, a mediocre deck, and not one that's going to kind of outlast this event. The changes to this event, the changes to this Slayer event, there's one thing on here that really jumped out at me and made me excited, and that's this trophy rewards from raid bosses have been overhauled. If you've been playing this game for the past couple of months, you know that the last 2 Slayer events were kind of disasters. 2 Slayer events ago, they introduced Cobalt bosses, and they only showed up on the last day of the event. But the rewards from killing those bosses, or even just tagging those bosses, were so big that everything that had happened on the previous 4 days of the event didn't matter at all. You could have been at the top of the leaderboards on the 4th day, and if you had to go to work on the last day of the event, you came back and found yourself way, way, way down on the leaderboard, because one Cobalt boss could just bump people way up. And so the Cobalt bosses were the only ones that ended up mattering. The first 4 days of the event were totally useless. So Network realized that, and the next time they introduced the Cobalt bosses earlier in the event, but then they introduced elite bosses, and the elite bosses caused the same problem. Now, it made no sense to attack or to tag any boss other than the elite bosses, because the trophy rewards were so big from them that it completely and utterly dominated every other boss in the event. So all the other bosses were just in the way. You just had to kind of clean through them and clear them out so that you could get to the elite bosses, because they were the only ones that mattered. So clearly Network realized that problem, which makes me happy to see that they're addressing something that was a huge, huge problem. So we'll see what this means when they completely overhaul the trophy rewards. So hopefully now 99% of the bosses won't be useless, and it will actually make sense to attack all of the different types of bosses. We'll see when it comes out, but I'm kind of excited that they've made that change. So I'm hopeful for this upcoming Slayer event, even though I'm not hugely excited about the event deck. I hope you have fun playing Grove of the Titans this weekend. Until next time.